Joining us now is Joe Cirincione. He's president of the Plowshares Fund, which is a global security foundation. He's also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Joe, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
I know you were there when President Obama gave that speech today. Should we just see this as a commemoration of Richard Lugar at the end of his Senate career, which was so important to this issue, or did this have policy significance today?
It's more than a commemoration, although that was a big part of the purpose, and he told some very funny stories and had some very warm reminiscences of both Sam Nunn and Lugar, who were being honored. But then he turned serious, and you heard this part of his speech. You quoted my favorite line: missile by missile, warhead by warhead, shell by shell, we're taking this bygone era apart. We're moving towards a world where these weapons will never again threaten our children. So he chose this moment. This is the first national security speech since he was reelected, and he chooses to talk about nuclear weapons, to underscore his personal commitment to it, to reaffirm his vision that he expressed in Prague in his first foreign policy speech as president, that this is important to him. And he did it at the National Defense University with this entire nuclear security team in front of him. This was as much a message to the bureaucracy as it was to the American people in the world. This is important to me. I intend to see this through.
His personal commitment on this issue, his long-standing personal interest in this issue, is something that has made it an issue to watch since he first became president, frankly, since he first became a senator. But how do you judge his first term in terms of how well he has kept his promises or aimed at least toward the things he wanted to get accomplished in his first terms as president in this field?
He has kept almost all his promises in this field. In fact, there's a fact-checking site, PolitiFact, I think.
I've never heard of him.
That ran the numbers down today and judged that in most cases he kept his promises. He did a nuclear reduction treaty with Russia. He did increase and speed up the work to secure these nuclear materials. He strengthened the international non-proliferation regime, making it harder for other countries to try and get these. But he faced resistance from his own bureaucracy. He faced some reluctant partners, particularly in Russia, and he faced political opponents, particularly in the U.S. Senate. So he's only achieved about half of what he intended to do. And that's what made this speech so important today. Here he is saying, the job is not yet done. We have a long way to go. I intend to see it through to the end.
Well, one of the last times you and I talked about this, we talked about the fact that what the Republicans in the Senate in particular demanded in exchange for ratifying the New START treaty with Russia is that they demanded many, many, many billions of dollars to be put into building new nuclear weapons and supposedly modernizing the nuclear arsenal. And for a president who's talking about taking this thing apart shell by shell, missile by missile, to also be making those big investments in nuclear weapons laboratories and nuclear weapons manufacturing and nuclear weapons modernizing, it seems like a bit of an oxymoron. How do you assess that side of his deal-making?
Well, in the Prague speech, he also said that as long as these weapons exist, we have to make sure they're safe and secure and effective, which is true. We're stuck with a lot of the cost in the nuclear weapons complex. We spend about $56 billion every year on nuclear weapons and related programs. We're scheduled to spend about $640 billion on these programs over the next 10 years. Clearly, this is excessive. Clearly, this can be cut back, and this is the gap in the president's program. There's been a gap between his policies, which seek to reduce and eliminate these weapons, and the contracts, the procurement for these systems, which continue to go upwards. The policy has not caught up with the procurement. That's why it's so urgent that he act soon in his new term to bridge that gap, to want to gain control of the policy apparatus, to slow those contracts down before we lock in the building of an entire new generation of missiles, bombers, and subs.
Joe Cirincione, president of the Plowshares Fund. Joe, thank you very much tonight. It's always great to have you here.
Thank you, Rachel. Great segment.
All right. Cheers.